And good evening, I'm Adam Longo. The new year will ring in another wild and woolly year for politics. It begins January 10th in Maryland and Virginia when the legislatures convene, and there will be no shortage of controversial measures to debate. We're going off script for in-depth analysis on those topics and more. Let me get right to our guest and introduce him. Bruce DePuyt, a longtime anchor and reporter for News Channel 8 here in the D.C. Metro. And for 14 years, the host of News Talk. He's covered local politics in our area for more than 20 years and has a wealth of knowledge to share with us on the horizon of the 2018 legislative sessions in Virginia and Maryland. Bruce, great to have you here, and you really come at a perfect time. It's been a really difficult week here at WUSA9. Bruce Johnson, obviously, on vacation for the holidays. Bruce LaShan as well with his family. So we've had Bruce withdrawal. So to have you here is quite fortuitous and great.
Thanks for the invite. Good to see you.
Absolutely. So listen, I want to start by talking about Virginia politics and where things are expected to go there. But we have to begin that conversation with the House of Delegates in this outstanding race in the Tidewater in Newport News. Can you talk to us about where things stand with that race tonight?
Well, the November election in Virginia was a bombshell. It was a Democratic wave, a blue wave. All three of the Democratic candidates for statewide office won overwhelmingly. And in the Virginia House of Delegates, Democrats outperformed any predictions from anybody in any party. Going into Election Day, Republicans held a 66-34 advantage in the Virginia House of Delegates. Democrats virtually erased that entire advantage. Now we've got a couple races still too close to call, still not final, so to speak. And depending on how those two races end up getting sorted out, we're either going to have a 51-49 advantage for Republicans, which is to say the narrowest possible advantage, or that dread scenario where it's 50-50 and the lawmakers are basically going to have to come up with some unscripted way of governing themselves. If that ends up happening, buckle your seatbelts.
Is there a timeline to decide these races? Is it up in the air right now? I mean, clock's ticking.
Clock is ticking. They go in a couple weeks, and it's in everyone's best interests for the issues and the races to be resolved. But there are some really tough issues. One is kind of a hanging Chad type of issue,
sure,
if you remember Florida after the year 2000 election there. And the other is whether people got the right ballot. And in some cases they didn't. That means that those voters didn't have the opportunity to express their vote properly. So a lot for the lawyers and the judges, I should say, to sort out. This is now in the legal realm. Hopefully they get it sorted out in time. If not, we go in with basically partial results and in an unscripted scenario.
It's a mess. It's a lot to clean up. 3 days after the legislature convenes in Virginia, we've got a new governor coming into the governor's mansion there in Virginia. So how is Governor-elect Ralph Northam expected to position himself on some of the hot-button issues that will be debated?
Ralph Northam, 4 years, the lieutenant governor in the state, riding a lot of momentum because not only did he win, and you'll recall in the closing days of the campaign, Democrats were worried and people were suspicious of whether he would be able to seal the deal. He did win, and he won pretty convincingly, 9 points over Republican Ed Gillespie. That gives him some street cred, if you will, in Richmond. What does he do with it? He's going to have to work with this uncertain environment in the House where he may have to help create a power structure that allows the regular order of business to go through. And depending on his mood, he may offer some cabinet posts to a couple Republican members of the House to tip the balance in his party's favor.
That would really shake things up.
It would. It would do it in a big way, and that remains to be seen.
Across the river, we've got another governor who's going to be fighting for his job. What does Larry Hogan have to do during this legislative session to, convince people he's the right guy for another 4 years?
So in Virginia, they just came out of a big election. In Maryland, they're just sailing into a big election. And as you point out, the state's popular Republican governor, Larry Hogan, is going to be seeking a second term in November of 2018. Hogan is well liked. He's well positioned for a second term. But remember, Maryland is an overwhelmingly Democratic state. Democrats outnumber Republicans hugely. Statewide races almost always are won by the Democrat. And the energy right now is on the left. Remember the results in Virginia and in Alabama. There's a tremendous appetite among Democrats to come out and win. So Governor Hogan has his work cut out for him.
Of course, one of the first legislative actions in Maryland could be a big fat gubernatorial slap to the face if the legislature in Maryland votes to override the governor's veto of the sick leave bill.
Paid sick leave is going to be a major issue in Annapolis this year. Everyone agrees there should be some sort of sick leave provision for workers who don't already have it from their employer. The idea being that if you're not well, if you're not, if you're under the weather, you shouldn't be going to work and spreading your germs around. If you need to care for a loved one who's sick, you should be able to do that without having to wrestle with the possibility that you'll lose money because you stayed home. So the devil will be in the details, but everyone seems to like the idea in concept.
Right. Let's talk about some of the other big issues. There's one big issue between both states, and that's funding for Metro. Both legislatures will have to grapple with this one.
Maryland is going to be grappling with it, so will Virginia, and so will the D.C. Council. As you know, and as your viewers know, the metro system here in D.C. is the only system of its size in the U.S. and maybe anywhere that doesn't have what's called a dedicated source of funding. That means regular money flowing in for maintenance. If the stars align, and D.C. Councilman Jack Evans, the chairman of the Metro Board, is trying to push the stars into alignment, you could have this year a vote for a dedicated funding source in Richmond, in Annapolis, and at the Wilson Building downtown. It would take a different form in each place. It might be a sales tax in D.C. It might be a real estate tax in Virginia. Nothing would go forward unless all three pass something. But if they do, it would be a major step forward for a system that has chronically lacked for cash.
Right. This is something that is key for everyone here in the DMV.
Whether you use transit or not, absolutely.
Right. It certainly will affect everyone. Bruce DePuyt, pleasure having you. Thanks so much for coming in. By the way, Bruce is writing for Maryland Matters Now. That is a political site that covers in-depth state politics in Maryland. He's also hosting a podcast with a focus on local politics. By the time this show ends, we're going to have links to those sites up on our website, WUSA9.com.